Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
The pecking order.
Yeah. So when I'm not here, Brad's the brunt of all the jokes and
Check. I don't
Check.
check. I don't think I'm making any. I don't think Brad's the brunt of any jokes.
oh no.
No, I just speak the truth.
The truth as you see it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which on this podcast is the truth.
So, Brad, on the day
Yes, Lionel.
we're recording this, a couple of momentous events today. On the day we were recording this, I was watching the local Toronto news, and they said that a physics professor was a co-winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And
that's fantastic.
And before they said his name, and just for a second, I was like, fingers crossed, is it going to be?
But I didn't make it this year. I didn't quite make the cut.
No. So how many times?
So it was the Nobel Peace Prize. It wasn't a Nobel Prize for science or
physics.
Yeah, it's Nobel Prize for physics. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Have you ever?
Have you ever? No, I have not.
Have you ever submitted your work?
No, I haven't.
Oh. It would be cool. It could be cool though, if it's like, and this year's winner of the Nobel Prize for Physics, and the timekeeper of the Jersey Shore Dogs football team.
Yeah, that would be cool. It's good to dream.
Do you think you'd mention me in your thank you speech?
Acceptance speech? I don't know how I could possibly avoid doing that. Yeah.
Okay, so tonight is part 2 of the Derek Magnotta Chronicles. A few weeks ago, we listened to part 1 where we were analyzing an email he sent, which I thought was a very well-written email about why he doesn't belong to the NMRA, and I think it's a very important discussion, and the first part went really, really well. A lot of good points were made, and I think it's really important how we determine how to get people who don't want to belong to the NMRA, specifically, let's say, under the age of 40, how we're going to get these folks to join the NMRA and make the NMRA prosper and thrive in the future. So this is part 2, and tonight, substituting for the mail boy, is our very own Mike Hauk. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi, Lou.
Good.
A former Navy doctor, a retired Navy doctor. After you were in the Navy, where did you work after that?
I came here to Erie, and then I worked a couple different places over 25 years. Right. Mostly at Hammett Medical Center, the big one in town.
Okay. What about, isn't the Cleveland Clinic the big one in town?
Nah, they're 90 miles away. They're in Cleveland. They're not in Erie.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
hence the name, Cleveland Clinic, not Erie Clinic. Yeah.
But I passed through Erie on my way to Cleveland. I passed through Erie on my way to Florida.
And you never stop by and say hello.
No, I know, because I'm always like, I got to get there. Because you're in the same, maybe it's a thing with doctors, because I never stop and see Doc Gartner either.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a doctor thing. And on that subject, just by coincidence, I was at the Toronto General Hospital today, and I have a medical question for you. I know you're not on the clock right now, but could you take a medical question?
Sure, as long as you understand my license is expired and I have no more certifications.
I understand that, but I can't imagine you've forgotten everything about basic medicine.
Not everything, but
no. So, yes or no? Are chocolate-covered jujubes a good dietary source of fiber?
I don't know. Does it say fiber jujubes on the label? If it doesn't say fiber, they probably don't have fiber in them. I know you can get fiber gummies, but if it doesn't say fiber, they probably don't have fiber in them.
I would guess, Lionel, you would probably be better off eating the paper they're wrapped in. For
I think that's
dietary
probably
fiber.
that's a good suggestion. Is grind up that cardboard box and eat a handful of those, a handful of that when you have your jujubes or whatever they are. Yeah,
they're jujubes.
Jujubes. Okay.
You never heard of that?
Well, I heard of jujubes. I never heard of jujubes though.
Really?
No, maybe that's a Canadian thing.
Have you ever heard of jujubes, Brad?
I've heard them called jujubes. I don't think I've ever heard them called jujubes. No.
Kelly?
No.
Wow. Must be a Canadian
maybe that's the Queen's English pronunciation.
Yeah,
I
really.
guess so, yeah. Because we call them, it's Jujubes. BES. Jujubes. And they're loaded with sugar.
Oh, okay.
Loaded.
and then yours are covered with chocolate yet to boot.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna talk to Derek again. I listened to most of the first interview, but I forget where we left off. So I'm hoping one of you three guys remember where we left off. Do you need me to open the email for you guys to see it, or do you guys all have your own copy of the email?
I have a copy right here. I've been going through it.
Okay.
Since I'm kind of late to the dance.
I have a copy of it as well. Yeah, you sent it to me today.
I never got a copy. That's all right.
Check your email.
Oh, email?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He's checking his email now. While he's checking his no, we can't because he's busy.
I can hear you.
No, I know you can hear me, but I was going to have to do something that I don't believe you can do two things at the same time.
Try me.
Okay, well, while he's looking for his email, we can talk about Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
All right, Derek, come on into the studio.
Hey, guys. How's it going today?
It's going.
Going great. Good to see you again, Derek.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me in the studio. Green room is excellent as always.
Yeah.
We've been having some complaints about the shrimp in there. How did you find those to be?
Well, I really appreciate last time I was here a couple weeks ago, I made a plate and got about halfway through it. And you guys called me in to the studio. So when I came back today, the plate was still there exactly where I left it, half eaten. And I was able to pick up right where I left off. So 10 out of 10 experience, guys. Perfect. 5 stars.
Nothing better.
For the record, shrimp might have more fiber than jujubes.
They definitely don't have less. I think we can be sure of that, right, Mike?
Did you find the email, Kelly?
I'm working on it.
Well, how is it that you're working on it? You open up your inbox and it should be the first. The one.
Well, I have to open up email first. So
well, how is it that hard to open up your email?
Because I'm on two different.
Don't start with me, Kelly. Don't start with me.
Kelly, I'm so glad you're here tonight.
See?
I apologize for this, Derek. We should be much better prepared.
You don't have to apologize for me. I'm still pulling up the email myself on my end. So Kelly's been covering for me. It's problematic because I sent it and I can't find it.
So where did we leave off?
You modern guys, I printed mine out.
Wow.
Oh, wow. We have this battle in our office where I would contend to the staff that we should never print anything out, and they love to use the printer. And I would argue we should just get rid of every single printer in the building. So I'm working on that. But then again, I look bad when I can't find the paperwork myself. So,
Derek,
do you have anyone in that office that's like my age? Because you probably gave any of them an aneurysm when you said that. No more paper.
Almost exclusively, which is yes.
I guess you're going to encounter a little bit of resistance there.
Yep, there's a reason why they try to run me off every time they see me.
I got a feeling, Derek, that you're basically a rebel without a cause.
Maybe. I think I'm passionate, and I think one of the cool things about my generation, people in their millennials,
before we go on, I'm getting a little sick of your generation, but carry on.
Oh, well, we're all getting a little sick of your generation. So, it's a two-way street there, Lionel.
You got to love the baby boomers.
You certainly do.
Yeah,
Derek, I have an important question to ask you now.
Okay.
Do you have a way to download this podcast after it's recorded?
I'm sure if I had admin rights, then I think I would.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just so you have a copy of the last one you were ever on after that.
Oh, I already thought I was banned. I'm surprised you guys let me back into the studio.
I've been banned several times, and he keeps allowing me to come back. So I think you're safe.
That key card keeps working downstairs.
Yeah.
The stubby professor, aka Brad Williamson, is the Billy Martin of the AML network.
Keep coming back.
I don't know who Billy Martin is.
Billy Martin was a manager for the New York Yankees in the 80s and 90s, I guess.
70s even, I think he was. Yeah.
And George Steinbrenner would keep firing him, and then he'd hire him back. And then he'd fire him, and he'd hire him back.
That's actually hilarious.
It happened at least 3 times.
Derek, you're probably too young to remember what an Etch-a-Sketch is, too, aren't you?
No, I know it because everything comes back around. So about 5 or 6 years ago, they were cool again for
that's what my contract's written on for the AML.
Nice. Okay.
So all he's got to do is shake it, and all the writing goes away.
But at least it's not written on paper.
True, that's true. It's not.
Kelly, are you having any luck?
Yeah, I've got it.
Attaboy. I'm proud of you.
I just don't know where we left off, though.
Me neither, but I'm pretty sure Derek will know. He'll remember.
I think we got through all of my complaints, and I think we should start with some of the positive stuff, like how we can fix it.
Did we get through the last complaint? What's the NMRA doing for the future? Maybe we did.
That was where my somewhat faulty memory thought we left. I thought we left off after the bureaucratic part. I could be wrong about that, though.
So tonight, Derek, we've invited Mike Hauk to join us because Mike is a active member of the NMRA, and he's a very active member in his division. What position do you hold in your division now, Mike?
I'm division superintendent and by default the AP chairman. I also put together the newsletter because we don't have a clerk right now.
Right. So I thought it would be fun to have somebody who's an active member of the NMRA that enjoys the NMRA and gets involved. And Mike is a very reasonable gentleman, so he'll enjoy being part of this discussion, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Look forward to talking with you, Mike. Yeah. And I think one of the concerns I had coming out of our last episode was that it sounded like I was complaining too much. And I think my goal with the email originally was just to call out some areas for growth and hopefully, to provide some perspective from millennials and, Gen Z who make me feel old in the hobby, because I don't think it's represented commonly. And I think the ends of the NMRA, it's been in survival mode, right? I think Gordy has done a great job fixing a lot. And I think that the perception I have is that things have stabilized and we've stopped the bleeding. So it's probably a good time to sort of zoom out and, call out some of the things that I think younger people like. But I think individual mileage varies with all of this. If you are somebody who enjoys the NMRA, like Mike, and you get a lot out of it and you enjoy that, the volunteering, participating, that's awesome. And I really hope that anything I'm talking about, I hope it's not discouraging to anybody, because the great thing about model railroading is it's kind of like, are you guys familiar with radar charts? Think of like a vintage radar screen, like you'd see like a World War II movie where it has concentric circles going out. Yep. And going around the outside of the circles are different things. So it might be like in the model railroading sense, scenery versus track versus electrical. And then you plot the lines going around the circle based on how interested you are in that topic, or in the model railroading sense. And then you basically get a map of your interests inside of the hobby, is kind of the way I would think about it. So if volunteering, if socializing, if participating with a group is one of the things that really is high on your radar chart, then I think that that's phenomenal. It's just not the way I enjoy the hobby. So I don't want to take anybody's positive experience for granted, and I don't want to discount anybody's enjoyment of the hobby.
No, I've listened to almost all of the last episode, and by now everybody's listened to the last episode, and it did not sound like you were just bashing the NMRA, because I was making a lot of points that I didn't agree with the NMRA on, and it wasn't about what was wrong. Remember, I said to you, it wasn't about what was wrong with the NMRA and bashing the NMRA. It was about, I'm very concerned because, like I had said, we interviewed two guys who've been on the podcast 2 or 3 times, Cam Neely and John Caffarelli, both in their mid-20s, both quite successful. One's a lawyer, and the other guy's Cam Neely, something to do with water in Idaho, and he's doing very well. Both university graduates, both built beautiful model railroads. And neither one of them see any value in the NMRA. So I didn't see our last one as bashing the NMRA. I'm more concerned about how do we get people to see value in the NMRA. And you wrote a very well-written email that was about that. So no, it didn't come across as you hated the NMRA and all things NMRA related. It sounded much more like I was trying to get to the point of how do we fix this problem, because I think it is a problem. It's a serious problem. I mean, we did talk about how almost all associations and groups are having this problem in the new world, but that doesn't mean the NMRA can't fix it and go in the new direction.
Well, let me ask this to the folks on the call. I think the fundamental issue is.
Hold on a minute. What call? We're all in the studio.
All in the studio. Sorry, you're right. Yeah. For everybody who's in the room here, you're right.
Did you forget about coming here from the studio with shrimp in it already? Or
I think the shrimp made me hallucinate.
Boy,
is the issue. Yeah,
that's a new complaint on the shrimp. Wow.
So I guess my question is what is the mission of the NMRA? That's simply, what is the mission of it?
I don't know. To be, don't ask me. Ask Mike. Mike, what's the mission of the NMRA?
Oh, I don't know. I could look it up, and I'm sure they've got a mission statement somewhere. That used to be all the rage. I was never a fan of them, actually. But
me neither. I'm not a mission statement guy either. I mean, the mission to me. The mission of the NMRA has always been to bring people who have an interest in this hobby together, and they do that primarily through division meets and regional conventions.
Isn't that more of a product or an impact than a mission? I think.
Is this a?
I would say, and I am certainly. I'm not super comfortable speaking for other people, which I mean, I am an NMRA member, but from my perspective, the mission is to promote and support the hobby of model railroading. Would that be fair? The rest of you guys who have been involved?
Yeah, through fellowship, standards, education. What else is available through that? Basically that kind of thing. Fellowship, education, standards.
Isn't it weird that it's
mentoring? Mentoring is part of it too, I think.
But isn't it weird that there's 5 of us here in this room and we're scratching our heads? And
let me play devil's advocate for a second here. I'm not necessarily defending the NMRA per se, but I wonder if the approach you're coming at is wrong. I wasn't on the previous show, so let me ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
You don't have to answer any of them if you don't want. It's none of my business. I'm just trying to get a feel for you as a generation, whatever, millennial,
what
Z,
generation
whatever.
What generation are? Yeah, when did we start that thing? When I was a kid, it was old guys and us.
Yeah, it was World War II guys, Korean guys, Vietnam guys. Yeah.
Well, it started with the baby boomers.
Yeah, I guess that's true. You got to pigeonhole everybody.
Yeah.
So anyway, are you married?
Yes.
Okay. Do you belong to any other organizations outside the NMRA that you have to attend in person, i.e. role-playing groups, bowling leagues, any professional organizations, that kind of thing?
Yeah, professional organizations and social organizations as well.
Okay, fair enough. So because I from what you're saying and looking at some of the stuff you've got here, and they're all good points. Don't get me wrong. It's just it seems like you're coming at this. You're coming approaching the NMRA like it's a product that you consume. It's not an organization to belong to. And I may have that wrong, but because when you ask about a mission statement, well, what's the product they're putting out? Well, the NMRA is not a corporation that's putting out a product for people to consume per se. I look at it as more of a social or fraternal organization with these additional missions or goals or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Mike. I mean, if it's just like a fraternity, like that's okay.
Well, because if people say, well, if their first idea out of the gate is, well, what's the NMRA going to do for me? And that's fair. If you're going to cough up the money for the membership and whatnot, you should have an idea of what you're going to expect in return. But by the same token, it's more than that. It's a gateway to be with other like-minded people. It's not really a product that you buy and take home and use in the privacy of your own home. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. But I think that there is a value proposition that.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah,
but that's not. I don't think that's the primary focus or raison d'etre of the organization.
But I think for the NMRA to survive beyond the baby boomers, it needs to find a way to grow its membership. The survival of the NMRA as it's structured today is based on membership. The members support the organization. There's no other sources of revenue. So you have to think about joining the NMRA as a product and how you convert people to join the NMRA in order to ensure its survival. But I think,
No, your point's taken. I understand. You need a hook to get people in to see what the greater value is beyond the initial impression. No, I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, and I think if you want young people to join, it needs to have I think there's a perception that millennials and Gen Z are disengaged and dispassionate, but that's actually the opposite. We want something whose mission, we want to be inspired. We want a mission. We have strong beliefs, and we will back what we believe in a way that a lot of other generations don't. And so, I think the reason why a lot of people don't join is because they don't see. I think that there is an assumption that can be made that if the NMRA went away, the hobby would still continue. I could still enjoy the hobby to a pretty significant degree. And I think I just want to raise an alarm bell to say, hey, NMRA, if you do want to survive, I think that we need a stronger mission. The NMRA's mission could be as simple as make model railroading better.
Well, that's basically what it's very simple. I just looked it up. It's the National Model Railroad Association Incorporated advances the global scale modeling community through education, advocacy, standards, and social interaction. That's their mission.
Well, I think then the idea that I would, and I'm glad you found that. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
I think it's incumbent on the NMRA to find a way to message. If people aren't buying your product, it's not their fault. It's your fault, right? It's as the seller of the product. And I think that there's maybe an attitude that, well, if people aren't going to join it, they're missing out. You need to prove to us that we're missing out.
Yeah.
And I can enjoy the hobby fine. I have for 32 years. Well, the 20 years of my 32 years, I've enjoyed it fine without being part of the organization. That's a problem. And I think if we can make it so that the organization is vocal, is central, and is vital to the hobby, then I think we can bring a lot of people along.
I think the association is vital to the hobby because if it wasn't there would be all sorts of different things going on, especially, obviously with DCC, that's an example of what the association saved because one of the manufacturers wanted to make it a proprietary to, the trademark it to the point where they would have control of it and everybody else would have, be infringing on their patent or whatever. And I think it's sort of the organization is sort of like a clearinghouse and a watchdog on what is being developed in the hobby and what's being used by the members or the public, so that there's not conflicts between systems. There's not conflicts between gauges, or it's just a central clearinghouse for model railroading.
I like
And
that.
using
That's
using
kind
standards and education, and also obviously social interaction.
it is. That's a good point.
Or a funnel. That's
Yeah.
that's another.
It's like, well, yeah, and that was a good point Derek made in the last one. But it is. It's like a clearinghouse for the NMRA, for the hobby of model railroading.
And I think the three things that I see that could be considered wrong, not wrong, but problems. Obviously, one is that the technology is advancing so quickly that the standards are not able to keep up with it. The other thing is, now I lost my thought. The interaction, social interaction, could be better. When people first join, some of them will run into the old man's club or people that just don't, they're not socially have any social interaction in their life, and they turn people off. And the other is, I think the big one is the cost.
I don't think the cost is
paying $78 for the people coming up that are under 45 or whatever the age keeps moving. Obviously, $78 could be a deal breaker because they just don't have that kind of money to spend.
Yeah.
Whereas like my club just raised their dues to $60 a year.
A year.
A year.
That's old world. There's clubs that are charging people almost $200 a month.
I know. Yeah. It's just.
Well, I think the other thing for younger folks is the time commitment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
I was going to say that one of the other, I think, obstacles to membership for younger folks is the time commitment. I know we have a couple guys that are involved, but their kids are younger. They have school events, they have church events, they have this and that, and a choice between coming to the division meeting, even if it's by Zoom, or going to the Little League game that afternoon. The family comes first, right? So they're not there. They're members, but they may not participate as much as they'd like because they have other more important commitments. So I think that's the time factor is very important, also, if not equal, if not more important than the financial commitment. And how you overcome that's very difficult.
And it's tough because, especially when you talk about Zoom, I just saw the post from the operations SIG. They're going to do away with their meetings on Zoom because people aren't going to them on the computer. I mean, the technology is just changing in your time. What like you say, what you're focusing on? You're going to focus on your family. You're going to focus on your hobby, or you're going to focus on the job. I mean, I know when I joined the fire department, I could never get to a lot of the meetings or to going to Springfield, for example, because I had to work all the time.
Right.
But I think the central organizing premise around meetings is broken. That's not how we participate in an information, the idea of a structured meeting at a specific time in a specific place is very 1980s, right? And I think the idea that we could have message boards, group texts, Instagram, Facebook groups, that's the kind of organic, on demand, on your schedule, but the engagement that happens today. And
one of the things I see problems with that, and that's the reason for technology and everything, is sort of sterile social interaction. You're not face to face, seeing the person's face as you make a statement, or you're showing off your modeling skills, and watching them or listening to them look at it face to face adds a little bit more to that interaction that camaraderie.
That's a generational difference. The people that I have gotten, that I've had the most intimate conversations with about model railroading, where I'm bearing my soul, and they're bearing theirs, it's happened over Instagram DMs or emails because they posted something that resonated with me, and I reached out and we started a conversation.
And that is a great point, because that is a generational thing. People Derek's age are as comfortable, if sometimes more comfortable, communicating through that texting and Instagram and all that. Old fogies like us aren't. Ask Lionel about some of my texts that come through sometimes. You wouldn't want to communicate. You need to decipher sometimes because
But there is I think there is that, and I'm being the devil's advocate on that. I think there is that one thing about texting and sending emails and doing, and not necessarily Zoom because you can actually see the people. There is something missing from that it's not really organic. I don't know how to. It has a lot to do with trust.
but that it isn't for people our age. But I would bet.
I'm just saying that the person, you don't see them, you just see this text come out, and the person may, we call them trolls now. I mean, that's the new thing, the trolls on the internet. And I'm not saying it's rampant. It's that little organic part of being human that we don't have. You don't have that space where you're looking right at that person, or you're watching their mannerisms, or you're
I completely agree with you, but I bet Derek doesn't have any idea what we're even talking about because you're probably completely comfortable communicating that way, whereas we're not. I can tell you one of the worst things for me was when we were coming out of COVID, and I didn't even realize this until COVID happened, but when all the kids had masks on, I didn't realize until that point how much I relied on nonverbal cues from them as to whether they were getting it. And with that mask over their face, they don't get it. And it's the same thing for me in texting. People will send you a text, and depending on the context that your mind tries to put on it, because you're missing that visual context, sometimes it can be almost offensive when they didn't even mean it that way. So it definitely is.
Or you can also take it where someone is texting just to placate, and you're not seeing that you're not feeling that feeling. Hey, well, they're lying to me right now. I could just their mannerisms or the tone of their voice. They're not telling the truth, or they're selling you a false statement.
But then that takes us basically full circle, I think, back to what these two podcasts are all about: is how do we, because you can't rely on the old guys or the older generation,
right,
to push the NMRA forward
into the future of this technology.
Like if we get to the positives or Derek's opinions about how to fix the NMRA, I love his first point. I'm going to read it. The NMRA should ditch the regional format. It should serve as a matchmaker between modelers to develop fellowship based on interest, not geography. In essence, it should be a platonic dating site for modelers, which is basically what I've been trying to say for a while now, because at one point Gordy had this idea of having a virtual region, which to me sounds brilliant, because I think a virtual region, then my friend Robin Felder in Switzerland, who's been on the podcast a couple of times and messages me quite a bit on Facebook Messenger, then him and I can be in the same region and enjoy whatever the events are that virtual region is having. Now, I'm interested in your opinion about that, Mike, because I know you enjoy your division quite a bit.
I do. It's it's kind of a struggle sometimes to, herd the membership and keep them together. I mean, that's its own struggles. Any volunteer organization has that. I don't disagree with this business about the regional format. It seems like regions in a way are too big in some ways. I mean, we have more in common with the Western New York division of the Niagara Frontier region, which is just across the border in the Buffalo region, and then beyond them, the Lake Shores division, that's part of the Northeast region. I was just up to the Northeast region convention and was talking to Dave Durr and some of the other guys. They're from up that way, and Andy McVeigh from the Western New York division, and we kind of kidded around. We got more in common with each other, our three divisions along the lakefront, than we have with our guys that are down in Kentucky. Nothing wrong with those guys. It's just easier to get to these other divisions that are in two different regions. And maybe we should form our own small region and just do things together. So I think in a way, sometimes the regions are too big. And I think the region seems to me at times, and I'm trying to speak diplomatically here, seems to revolve around the annual convention. And I was thinking today while I was outside doing yard work, why do we even need a region convention? It's expensive to go to, or it can be. I mean, it's great. I've been to a bunch of different region conventions, both in and out of our region. It's a great time. I see the same guys, and we haven't seen each other for 6 months. Hey, how you doing? Go out to dinner, we get some beers. So the fellowship is huge. But but it's not a cheap date. And if I'm retired, so I can go. I can take a couple of days out of the week. Not everybody can do that. So
Right.
is the regional format? I don't disagree with this. Should the region format be overhauled or done away with?
I think it should be overhauled a little bit because,
and that's why I sent that email. I was curious to see what John During was playing close to the vest when you talked to him about. He's got some ideas, but the board's not ready for him.
I mean, one of the things with a regional convention is you go into areas of the country that you probably wouldn't have gone, and you're part of that group. You see layouts, or meet people, or like you say, meet people you already know.
Yeah, so it does sort of get you out of your comfort zone. You're not seeing the same local layouts and all that kind of stuff.
I just came from an RPM up in Portland, and it was interesting watching the dynamics in the room, and everybody knew each other.
Yeah,
it was just okay. This is a fifth-year meeting, and they all knew each other.
And I can understand that if you're a younger guy trying to just break into that, until you break the ice and you see the same folks and find out who you have common interests with and exchange emails and communicate with away from the RPM or the convention and develop that relationship or that bond, until you establish that, then I can see why going to a convention or a meeting like that would be like, why should I bother? I don't know anybody there. It takes time to develop that.
Yeah.
And I think in today's day and age, if there's not immediate value, then there's not going to be follow through. I've gone to a regional convention and to test it out and had a pretty miserable time. I think I left within an hour because it wasn't a good event and didn't feel welcome. And
a regional
that was
one,
that.
A regional one or a divisional meet?
Oh, I don't know. This is why there's too much bureaucracy. I have no idea. What the heck is the difference, Lionel?
Yeah, and I think the other issue with these conventions, the divisions are all different sizes, and all of a sudden the region's telling them, well, you're going to host it this time.
Well, yeah, we had that. We were going to host a regional convention. COVID blew that out of the water, and we realized that the membership was not really interested in doing that. We didn't have a lot of members to begin with. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of angst. That's not why that's not why I'm in the hobby, to be a project manager for a convention.
Right.
That's going to hang over your head for 2 years. And I flat out told our region president, I said, until we change the format of the way these conventions are organized, we're not doing it. We're not doing it.
Especially because every region in the country has a pretty good RPM meet somewhere. And they do those organically without the NMRA.
Yes,
and
they
they're
do.
pretty successful.
Yes, they do.
So again, there's a ton of value there. I just think that the idea, and Mike, you weren't on our last discussion, but I live in Alabama and I grew up in Pennsylvania and I model in Pennsylvania. The folks around here, I don't have anything to talk to them about in terms of prototype modeling, because they're modeling Southern and Norfolk Southern and all the Southeastern railroads. And well, I know a little bit about that. I'm over here reading books about the Erie Lackawanna and Delaware Lackawanna, and that's my interest. And we can certainly, there's some value in cross-pollinating, right? But I just think that the world we're in is where we can specialize. We can organize ourselves based on interest, based on being specialized. Model railroading is not a broad interest hobby. It's a deep interest hobby. And so I think that we should find the people who care about the things we care about. And if there's a model railroader out there who's also into art history and also into, artistic representation of large industries and small spaces, like I want to find them and talk to them. I don't necessarily have an interest in going and seeing some slides about the Southern Railway. As much as that presentation is great and it means a lot to those people, and it's a great thing that it means a lot to them. It's just we all enjoy the hobby in such specific ways that Facebook groups, Instagram, YouTube all allow us to find that specialization and seek that out. Plus the algorithms of those organizations serve those things up to us, help us find that stuff. And so in this day and age, we don't need an NMRA, just like we don't necessarily need a phone book to find those people. We're going to find them anyway around the world. And I think that if the NMRA, could become a central clearinghouse for contacts for people. If it could be a supplement to all those sources I just listed, that's great. But just organizing us by geography doesn't really do too much for me.
If I could go back to one thing Derek said, I don't know that I have this exactly right, but I think I do have a point that goes along with what you said. When you mentioned that the RPMs happen completely independent of the NMRA, I'm not sure that isn't. I mean, I understand that it's not specifically put on by the NMRA, but I do think I remember hearing from someone, and please fill in the gaps in my memory, anybody else, but doesn't the NMRA make some sort of liability insurance or something available? I can't remember the details. I remember
there was a comment that they have some sort of either financial or legal input of some sort.
Yeah. And it helps, and it's kind of a behind the scenes thing that's not obvious, but I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this. There is some speculation, but I think I don't remember if it was Gordy or John Doring or one of those guys we were talking to, I think mentioned that there might be some RPMs that maybe couldn't happen if they weren't able to get that. And again, please don't take this as the gospel truth, because I'm going from my memory from something I heard.
That's what I remember too. Is they provide insurance, but I don't buy this. Some RPMs couldn't happen without insurance.
Well, and that's really cool.
Hang on, because that's part of the problem with the NMRA and the bureaucracy. They make up so much. Like, people have meetings all the time in their local towns about quilting, or they have meetings about craft fairs or whatever. And there's not some overriding threat of, if you don't have insurance, you're gonna lose your shirt. Like, the NMRA has this ability to create problems that don't really necessarily need to exist. That's part of the bureaucracy of the NMRA, which is part of the problem. And the other point I wanted to make, just briefly about Brad, is trying to fill in the gaps in your memory is like Evel Knievel trying to jump the Snake River Canyon.
That was very uncalled for and hurtful.
That was rude.
That was rude.
Yeah, that was rude.
Scott when you need him. That was rude.
Lionel, that was rude. I'll be sure to shoot you a text of my response to that, because I don't know if it's podcast appropriate.
Talk to HR.
Yeah, I think you're going to get a rip from that.
Does the evil overlord report to HR, or does HR report to him?
Yeah,
it's more of a ceremonial thing. It really doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, ceremonial thing.
Yeah, sort of like a human sacrifice is a ceremony. Sort of.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
This took a pagan turn really quickly.
But I think that's a great. Like, what do you think, Mike, about me personally? I think that's the biggest problem with the NMRA right now is the 40-year-old, or is the bureaucracy that comes from the 60s and the 50s. And
yeah, well, I think part of it's mindset. I mean, we were at a regional convention. I won't say where, and I won't name names, but we were at breakfast with a couple of us from our division, and we're pretty much open-minded, easygoing, we're not hidebound, let's try new things, that kind of stuff. Luckily, we have a core group of guys in our division that are that way. And we were eating breakfast with a gentleman spent a long time in the region leadership. And we were talking about what a great time we had at an RPM. It was just, there was no overhead, there was no contest, there was no banquet, there was not all this stuff. It was just pure distilled model railroading information and fellowship and going out to dinner and having drinks
and a raffle, right?
And a raffle, and the vendors were there, and you have drinks at the bar, and it's just a great time. And he kind of scoffed, "Oh, the RPM. Well, those guys aren't organized." And we looked at him
man, no.
That's the appeal. They're not organized.
Well, they are organized. They are organized.
They are organized, but
two or three guys that are doing all the work.
Well,
and if it's successful, it's a great thing to see.
Right, but the organization is invisible to the attendees pretty much. And we looked at him like, that's why it's so great. There's not all of this administrative overhead. So a lot of that I think it's attitude, and whether that's a generational thing or it's the being involved in the administration of a region or whatever draws people with that sort of organizational mentality. I honestly don't know, but I think it's attitudinal more than generational.
Well, and I think we've talked about this in the last podcast, but there's an innovator's dilemma, right? If you are an organization that's had some success and has lasted so long, you don't really have an incentive, or you're caught between a rock and a hard place between keeping what you have and chasing what the new shiny startup is doing. It's I think I mentioned Kodak as the classic business school case for this, but Kodak was way too late adopting digital cameras, and that's why startups were able to destroy a great American brand, Sears, the internet. Over and over again, you see these things where newcomers on the scene are able to replace long-standing legacy organizations with great reputations because those old organizations are too slow to adapt.
Right.
And I would argue that the biggest competitor to the NMRA is not RPMs. It's Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and podcasts like this with great communities, every Facebook group. I think that when you have an organization that is not growing, you kind of have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and start over again. And that could be painful.
Or they need to adapt.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between adapting and being so incremental and deliberate that the adaptation that you make, you're constantly being lapped by progress. And I think that's even with the current direction of NMRA, I think the trajectory is stable. As an observer and as a just prolific reader and listener to content in the hobby, I think the NMRA is doing okay. It's not doing great. But if you're not growing, you're dying. And there is a demographic cliff. And I think the hobby will survive. I wonder, how we can make the NMRA survive. And I think there are some real things we can do to make sure the NMRA does survive.
The hobby will absolutely survive.
Right.
The NMRA,
Yeah.
The NMRA is what's on. It's on life support now. I mean, even at 16,000 members, it's on life support because everybody's trying to figure out, how do we keep it? How do we, get new members and this and that and the next thing? And it's like, well, it's really simple. Stop doing what you've been doing for the last 60 years and
change something that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, since it's already kind of a going concern, like Derek said, it's like trying to change an engine on an airplane while it's still flying. You can't. It's tough to do if you have all these sunk costs and sort of a corporate.
It's a lot harder to unlearn things that have been learned over generations than it is to start knowing nothing and learn.
Right.
It really can be a lot of times. And I don't know the solution to that either. I don't, but I know we're never going to get it if we don't have conversations like what we're having tonight. That's the only hope we have of coming to it. So
that's exactly it. Yeah.
I think the single biggest thing the NMRA could do is create a free tier so that we can move from 5% maybe of model railroaders being in the NMRA sphere to 95% of model railroaders being in the NMRA sphere.
That's actually that's a pretty good idea. Who thought of it?
Probably you.
Must be.
If you're asking, I know the answer.
Yeah.
But I think
if he first says it's a great idea and then asks, yes, you can rest assured.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that does already sort of kind of exist. I mean, you can come and participate in your local division meetings. I think up to 3 times before you would be asked to join, and even then, you can join using the Rail Pass. You can get what is it, 6 or 9 months of membership for $20 or something like that.
I think it's 9. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing you don't get is the ability to vote in your local division. So you can dip your toe in incrementally like that. Now, can you sort of be a free level member forever? No, you can't.
Well, but I think we have to think about what's the product for a free tier member. Because I'm sure somewhere in a footnote or buried, then there is a way for us to do it. But I think there needs to be a pretty active campaign backed up by some solid value to get people to say, I'm a model railroader. I don't think that there are any more model railroaders today than there were 30, 40 years ago. I think that there's just more people who are vocal about that, who are organizing themselves and participating externally in the hobby. And I think podcasts like this bring them out. Heck, it brought me out of the modeling room.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
And I don't think the NMRA knows who those people are.
Hang on a minute. When it brought you out, did you bring your Rapido trains?
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's HO, the fast track is Rapido.
Absolutely. I don't go anywhere without my Rapido trains.
There you go. This is a great discussion, though. You're right. Like, if you had if you go to the NMRA National Model Railroad Association Facebook page, they got 17,000 members. And I bet you a lot of those people don't belong to the NMRA, and they technically have more members on their Facebook page than they do have paying members. And
Right.
And it's
that brings up an interesting point. The upcoming national in Novi, I believe you do not have to be a member of the NMRA to attend that.
Oh, really?
And because one of our region board of directors meetings, there was a little bit of grumbling about that. It's like, well, why belong to the NMRA if you could just come to the national? And I think I could argue either way, but as a way to encourage people to come and attend a convention and not lose your shirt. I mean, from that standpoint, I think it's not a bad idea because you might attract some RPM people that are not NMRA members or people that are wondering, well, what's it worth? Oh, I'll go to the national. I'll go to the big show and see what it's like.
Yeah.
But that's just an example of the NMRA playing small ball. Well, I'm glad that they're doing that. That's great. But that resistance
that's the local convention
yeah.
people doing that. That's not from national. I think there was some grumbling at national about. Don't quote me on that. But
and I love that they're doing that. But I think that I don't know that anybody in the NMRA, and maybe they do. I'm not sure if anybody in the NMRA understands organic growth in the 21st century, like how to generate demand for whatever you have that you're selling. There's two different, in marketing, there's two different funnels. There's an information funnel where you get people in your orbit and you start informing them about what you do. And then there's conversion funnels, which is the second stage where once they're in that orbit, you try to inject opportunities for them to say yes, to press buy. Think of it like joining a mailing list for a hobby shop, and then that's the information funnel. And then being sent promotions is the conversion funnel. If the NMRA had a free tier and they put a significant percentage of their energy into growing, let's say adding 50,000 free members that say, I'm a model railroader, there's a marketing campaign, come out and say, you're a model railroader, join the NMRA all plan, right? You'd have 50,000 people in an information funnel. And if then every year you add 10%, and every year you convert 10% of those into new members, you're adding 5,000 paid members per year until you max out.
Well, and
then you adjust those conversion rates.
And actually, they've already got a great because you could have a free tier, and all you get as a free tier is you get a membership number and you get to go to conventions, blah blah blah. But
you join the email list,
yeah, join the email list. But by joining, the next thing they have, which is a really great thing, is they have the, what do they call it, Brad, where you use your partnership program, which is a really easy way to get your money back, because there's so many companies involved where you get 10% of the cost taken off, 10% less.
Sometimes it's even more than that. Some of them offer 15. I think there are a few companies that even offer 20. I know there's 15% anyway.
Yeah, and then primarily it's 10. So even if you just go with 10, I mean, you can soon chew that up with what's the tool company? Micromark. Yeah, I mean, you can chew up that $50 or $60 right there without doing. And I'm sure NCE probably is part of it. And there's 50 or 60 companies that are part of it.
And it's growing every week, and I will tell you that essentially my NMRA membership has been free with those for 2 years. Probably just from stuff that I've bought from 2 companies that are on that list, and I have bought stuff from other companies too. So I know I will guarantee you, without even having to sit down and add it all up, that I have saved more money through the partnership program than my membership cost me. Now, having said that, I am in the process of building a fairly good size layout, so I may have more purchases than
Yeah.
someone building a smaller layout. But still,
But still,
it is.
I can't imagine. I don't think there's. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Actually,
That's okay.
Actually, I'm not. But
Yeah.
But none of this
I
is
knew you
about-
didn't mean that.
None of this is about the money. I mean, how many people buy a $60 tangent scale trains Rapido
Box
freight
car.
car every month?
Yeah, yeah.
Box car. Yeah. I have $60 of box cars sitting on a box on the floor that I haven't even unpacked yet. Like, it's not about the money anywhere. It's about value. And so if we can, if you can create a magnet, you create magnets to bring people into your information funnel, and then you make offers to them in order to convert them into paid members. That's how you grow. For too long, I think the NMRA has relied on, being peer pressured at the hobby shop, being peer pressured at the local club, being, peer pressured on this podcast. People are making individual sales pitches. And I just think that that's not how you grow an organization in today's day and age. I mean, in the growth tactics that I'm talking about, that I've learned in technology sales, technology startups, a lot of that comes also from church growth, right? It comes from other nonprofit growth. The church marketing to high tech sales pipeline in terms of talent is really strong. So I just think that none of this is unproven in terms of nonprofit organizations, civic organizations. It's just that nobody's ever thought to do it with the NMRA. And if I think there's a lot of potential here to make the hobby better, which should be the mission, right? If we can get 100,000 people saying, "I'm a model railroader, I'm joining the NMRA," that's a net positive for the hobby. And then you get 10% of those to convert to paid members. That's a win. There was a podcast, a long time ago, and Lyle, I think we've had this conversation, where the NMRA came on AML and said, we're going to add 10,000 new members or something like that. But what I didn't hear was, how are they going to do that? I think that you need to have a campaign where you have people create really good content for the NMRA that gets them into that funnel. It converts them into the information funnel, and then you try to make them members. And the value might be the platonic dating site. The value might be,
for
heck,
sure.
I don't know anything about the NMRA standards. I haven't needed to as a modeler. But if I think in the last podcast, Bruce said, well, they have actually adopted the 21 pin MTC decoder standard. That's great. Tell me that as a modeler. And I'm not part of that information funnel right now because there hasn't been a conversion for me yet. And I think the NMRA can go out and spread the good word.
Well, the NMRA has to take chances. That's the problem. They're at a point now where they have to take chances. 2 points I'd like to make is, you said you don't think the hobby's growing. I disagree with you 100%. I think the hobby's growing like crazy. And I think in 20 years, you won't recognize the hobby because there are so many people that have some connection to trains. And, it's like your description of the funnel, Derek, where you say, at the bottom of the funnel are your dyed-in-the-wool, really intense model railroaders. And at the top of the funnel are a bunch of people that are just hanging around the hobby. But I think the hobby's growing like crazy. And sure, part of it is we're all connecting now, but that just encourages enthusiasm and makes people stay in the hobby. And then the new people, people don't leave the hobby anymore. They stay with you never could leave model railroading anyways because it's some sort of magical place. But I think the hobby's growing like crazy. And the other thing, which I've brought up many times, and I will continue to beat to death, that the NMRA doesn't seem to be able to grasp, is you take, for example, Iron City N Scale. Now, these are two guys, our very own Brad Williamson and his buddy Patrick Moore, They started a Facebook page called the Iron City N Scale, and they now have over 1,300 members. And I was just interviewing Alex Lang, who owns Station Inn in Crescent, Pennsylvania, stationinpa.com. And, all the guys got together and spent the weekend at the Station Inn and because they're at the Altoona N Scale show. And as you said, Brad, you thought you were a lone wolf, and now you've got this gigantic community that you created merely by going, "Hey, anybody want to join our Facebook page?"
Yeah.
And it kind of all goes to what Derek is saying about, this is why we need to have these discussions, and this is why, okay, people don't like the fact that Lionel sometimes sounds like he's anti-NMRA, which I don't think I ever sound like I'm anti-NMRA, but Lionel sometimes criticizes the NMRA. Well, if you're not prepared to listen to what people have to say, you're never going, like, the NMRA is just going to die a slow and miserable death if they don't get with the times.
Well, in the Magic City N Scale group, I joined it after the last time we were all together, after hearing about it on the podcast.
Iron City.
Yeah,
There's
nothing magical about Brad.
Well, no, but,
Hey,
there is Lionel. Brad disappears all the time, and he's always coming back.
There is nothing.
Feelings, gentlemen, feelings.
There is nothing magical about Brad Williamson.
Hey, Lionel, Kelly's here tonight. May I remind you?
and he invented the Kelly questions. What have you done?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
I sneak in a back secret entrance to the studio all the time. That's my contribution.
Yeah.
But I see on Facebook the Iron City group posts, and it makes my day because the community is optimistic, they're supportive, there's true collaboration, and I think that it's a safe space. This podcast, the community you've created, you guys aren't elitists. I don't think that you are so genuine and kind on here, except when Lionel's talking to Brad.
I'm glad you picked up on that. Thank you.
Yeah,
He's picked a side now, though. That could be trouble.
Yeah, you're really in trouble now. But thank you.
I'm just analyzing. I'm not picking sides. But I think that's the kind of interaction that I think is kind of rare in the hobby. I think that there's a lot of passion in this hobby, and sometimes that passion comes off poorly. And I think that if there's one thing I could maybe suggest, it's that I don't think any model railroader is a bad person, but I think we just need to make sure we're having grace and we're being supportive to everybody. I think there's a generational consideration.
If I can sound like a typical old guy, which unfortunately I realize I'm doing really well. I think it's kind of interesting talking to you, because you're talking about the same ailments that many, many model railroaders have had before they start to meet people. And, like, for example, just being on this podcast, you've met Brad, you've met Kelly, and you met me, and your group is starting to grow. And I think what we're trying to talk about here is what the NMRA is missing is the internet, like what you said. This is brilliant. It should serve as a matchmaker between modelers to develop fellowship based on interest, not geography. I mean, to me, That's exactly what the NMRA. It needs to take a hard right turn and go, okay, that's great. We got here. The NMRA flourished for many, many years. It's a new world. Now we got to go in this direction.
Right.
I think you really are hitting on something there. With the new age, does it make sense anymore and this is a rhetorical, not rhetorical, but it's a lot of hypotheticals, but does it make even sense to organize based on geography alone anymore with the way we can communicate with each other now, that it doesn't have to be I can't communicate with anybody who's more than 2 hours away from me. So we need a division that's sized according to that. We can communicate with people clear across the globe now with the snap of a finger. So
well, yeah, you look at this podcast right tonight. We got a guy in Erie, Pennsylvania. We got a guy that's 3 hours away from him in Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania, Split Lip, Pennsylvania, which is an hour or two away from Philadelphia. We got a guy in Medford, Oregon, which is clear across the other side of the continent. We've got a guy in Alabama, and we got a guy who lives just north of Toronto, home of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Boy, if we could get a goalie that could just somehow acknowledge that he understands the play's coming towards him, and he should try to position himself somewhere in front of the net to stop the puck.
I think you're asking for too much. You got to start with him just looking at the puck as it comes across the red line. Get him there first, and then you could talk about positioning.
But you look at that. We got 5 guys. How many guys are here? 4? 4. We got 4 guys spread across North America. They're having a great time. And Derek, you've only met Mike tonight. You've talked to Kelly twice. You've talked to Brad twice. You talked to me twice. If we were all at the same RPM meet, at the same NMRA division meet, at the same NMRA regional meet or national convention, the 4 of us would say, hey, you want to go to lunch? And we'd never met each other other than we knew each other from this. And we'd all go, yeah, let's go to lunch.
Well, I know. Far be it for me to correct you, but there's 5 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
I
what
think
I was asking.
he wasn't counting himself. I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that is a great point. It would be if we all met. Like none of us has ever met Derek, but I think it'd be cool to meet up in person and we could share a table for 5.
Yeah, like you wouldn't even think twice about it. You wouldn't think twice about it.
No, not at all.
No.
I would say if I saw any of you, I'd probably walk right up and give you a hug. I mean, I'd be so excited to see any of you, and I think that's
there's no hugging, no hugging.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm Pennsylvania German. We don't hug.
That makes Lionel feel icky when people come up and hug him.
he really is the evil overlord. It's not just a name. Fine, Brad. I'll give you a hug, Brad. You probably need one after tonight and the verbal abuse you've taken.
Man, you are putting yourself in the doghouse. I appreciate the moral support, but you need to know what you're doing to yourself right now.
Oh boy.
Just wait till he gets to know you a little better. This will all be reflected for throughout eternity.
I think we could stop this podcast right now. And it's been a great discussion, but let's read one of his next point here, and just for shits and giggles, we'll read it and talk about it. But I think we've already made great headway. I think what we've solved is we all agree that the NMRA, the old world NMRA has got to go, and we gotta find a new direction. And I don't think it's that difficult. I really don't think it's that difficult. I mean, Brad,
because none of us is sitting here advocating for burning the whole thing down and starting from scratch. There is a lot of good, but I don't know the right word. Maybe it just needs repackaged,
it needs to morph into something that's much more modern.
Yeah, exactly. Modern, so that guys like Derek and other guys his age can go, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I'll go. Because if Derek had met somebody, if Derek meets some guys online, and I'm sure you must have some people you converse with online that you've met either through YouTube or whatever. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. If 3 or 4 of them said, hey, we're going to go to this RPM meet, or we're going to go to this division meet, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll see you there. It's not that you don't want to go. It's that you don't want to feel left out. That's the key.
Yep.
And
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's a human trait. Like everybody, that's the beauty of this. Like I've often said, the best years of my life in model railroading have been since I started this podcast. Absolutely, the most rewarding things I've ever done is since I started this podcast. And one of my favorite, I don't know if I've ever fully told this story completely from start to finish, but I was already somehow friends with Jim Sacco, who owned City Classics. I don't remember how him and I became acquainted, but somehow we became acquainted. And then I started the podcast, and it was in when the national convention was in Cleveland, and he was at he had his booth at the National Train Show. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey, Jim, can I leave my stuff here? I just want to go record a couple of." And from that, Jim Sacco's booth became the NMRA headquarters at the Springfield show, at the national conventions, wherever he was. And he was thrilled. He was thrilled because he was a very quiet guy, unassuming guy. And he was just thrilled to have made this connection with people. And it was one of my favorite things about the podcast is just that we brought so much joy to his life. Like he just was, we took over his booth, and he was thrilled that we did.
There's something we don't want to lose perspective on here from what Lionel just said. You're hearing this from a guy who had a really awesome layout that he built himself, operated for years that he built himself. The layout made the cover of Model Railroader magazine, the preeminent magazine for the hobby at the time in the world, and had a regular column in there. And he just said the best thing he's ever done was reach out and get to meet people and create a community online in this podcast. That in his mind overshadows all that other awesome stuff that he did earlier in his life.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Call
good point. HR real quick. Good point.
But he's right. But Brad's right. I mean, I was thrilled to be on the cover. I think I had 3 or 4 covers on Model Railroader magazine, and one on Garden Railways, and then I had the column and the whole bit, and I was thrilled with all that. But once I stepped into this world of meeting people and expanding my friendships, it was like the hobby came to life. And that's why I use the example of the Iron City N scale. I mean, Brad, you and I have had the discussion numerous times that you thought you were the only guy on the planet that was into model railroading. And now your life...
Yeah, it felt that way a lot of times. You're right.
And your life is now 180 degrees different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and way better than it was. I mean, I was still having fun on my own.
Sure.
But the ability to share it with other people just multiplies that exponentially.
Yeah.
And it really does. And that's that's the secret sauce, I think, that the end we have to get the NMRA to I don't know, buy into or promote or whatever, because once somebody has experienced that, somebody even who's been on the sidelines as far as the NMRA is concerned, Derek, once you experience that, if you can experience that type of thing through the NMRA, you don't ever want to give that up. Once you get that fellowship camaraderie that this hobby is capable of producing, that's the hook. As you were saying, the hard part is to get people to get, even when there are other avenues that they can get the same type of fellowship from. And I know this isn't new. We've said it all along. The NMRA has to sell fellowship.
That's it right there. That's it.
What were you going to say, Mike?
Oh, I was just going to say that the fellowship, the human contact, and then going back to what Kelly had said about the online things, the messaging, and the other social media is good in and of its, as far as it goes. But the actual human contact is very important. And I'll put my doctor's hat on here for a second, especially for men, and nothing against the women in the hobby or anything like that, but especially for men after they retire, if they don't have a support structure of some hobby where they get together with other men, and they don't have to be the same age, but to interact with them in some form or fashion, even if it's gone for coffee once a week or something like that, it's very important to prolong your health and your life. So the human element should not be discounted. And I think, Derek, I'll put my old guy hat on now. As you get older, I think you will find that the online interaction is good as far as it goes, but the human interaction is definitely much more important.
I can relate to that, because usually, like when I went to Tom's, the second with Tom Sock 2020, whatever, the first one I ever went to, everybody left. And I went with a small group of people in my car to drive up to a couple of hobby shops. And it was like at each hobby shop, a group of people would peel off to go home. And when I got back to the hotel, I felt good because of what happened all weekend long, or week. But I also felt that emotion of missing people, missing that camaraderie, the feeling that here I was by myself, right, as a lone wolf, and I had to understand what I was feeling, and the feeling of that camaraderie when you don't have it, it makes it more exciting to go to other things, whether it's an RPM or a division meeting or a club meeting or somebody's show. It's exciting to see people and to meet new people.
Well, and Derek's already done it, because if he came to the Springfield train show and came over to the AML booth, he would instantly have 20 people to go to dinner with.
Oh yeah, and a lot of cheese balls.
And a lot of cheese balls.
Served with a snack div, even.
Yeah, served
by Brad in a bunny suit.
Yeah, this year, Mike, we're and Derek.
Kelly, we're trying to attract people to the hobby
See that, and that's the attraction of like the AML is I think sometimes the people in the NMRA, they just take themselves too seriously. I mean, I take the hobby seriously. I mean, I guess I consider myself a serious modeler, but I don't take myself too seriously. So I think you got to maintain a sense of humor and a sense of openness. Like, yeah, sure, that guy's a goofball, but he's a good guy. That kind of thing.
Yeah, we all want authenticity. We want something that's real. I think when I think about the NMRA, I think about paperwork, not human relationships. And that's a pretty and Kelly and Mike, I appreciate both of you that perspective on human relationships, right? I think, especially for men. And that's such a good points. And Kelly, thanks for. I think we would all do better as men to talk about our emotions more. And I appreciate you, Kelly.
Some people have that difficulty. It's understandable because of the way they've been brought up or the things that have happened to them.
You're right, though. There is that element of sadness when it's all over and everybody's going back their separate ways. There is a big excitement leading up to. I remember I could hardly sit still in my car on the 7-hour drive up to Springfield.
Honestly, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but I don't remember one single time when I've left Brad where I've had an element of sadness.
I'm going to call you on that. The phone call, and I'm bringing up a subject, so just it feels good to me to bring it up. At least we have 2 members of the AML network that are not with us anymore.
Yeah,
and I remember you calling me up, and I was crying. I mean, I'm doing it right now.
I know. Yeah. I know. Yeah. You better hope that you die before I do, because if I die first, you're gonna cry buckets.
I'll be a wreck.
I know.
I'll be a wreck. But it's that camaraderie. It's that fellowship. It's that's the product. That is the product.
We have created through the AML Nation. We have created such a group of people and today a classic example is Mike and I know each other. But I wouldn't say, and we would certainly easily be able to go to lunch, just the 2 of us. But we have.
Are you picking up the check?
No, this is AML. You buy lunch.
Oh, is that how it works? Okay,
that's how it works.
I didn't read the fine print. All right,
exactly. I'll pick it up after you drop it. My favorite thing. Every year we go to Bear's Barbecue after we set up the booth at Springfield, and I think the first year we did it, David Start is a good friend of mine, a close friend of mine, and him and I are in line together. And I actually fully intended to pay for lunch, but we get to the till, and I just stared at him. And he bought both lunches, and I went,
"Oh boy,
perfect."
That definitely is the product. That's the thing.
Absolutely, it's the product. That's the product that we're producing.
But it's hard to package that neatly and sell it, though.
And obviously the problem is that you have people out there that don't have that ability to create an atmosphere to make people feel more welcome. There's a number of people out there who do really well, and some of the divisions do it really well.
Yeah.
I think that would be something that the NMRA was doing a program to try and identify how to do that.
I really like Derek's idea of a free level. I mean, you want to get people into the organization, create some sort of a free entry level where you get a membership card and a membership number, and then it's up to you to decide what level of involvement you want to be in. And I mean, right out of the box, like we say, this partnership program, you can easily recover $50 or $60 a year if you're active. And if that's your issue, the money, it's not hard to recover the money.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And
If I can, oh, sorry, go ahead.
what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like,
don't ever interrupt me again.
I've learned my lesson. Yeah.
I told you, you're digging a grave for yourself. Your lucky hard part's not here with his HR forms.
Oh,
man.
Yeah.
I don't mind being in the doghouse. That's okay with me.
All right.
But
you passed that exit about 100 miles ago.
okay.
The first time you stuck up for me, you.
We already established I'm a rebel without a cause.
There you
So
go,
here we go.
there you
I'm
go.
just digging in self-destruction. I think if I can like quickly summarize this, it's that model railroading by itself is like a practice of self-expression, but it's made better when you participate with others. And if we as modelers can enhance our self-expression and our layouts and our super detailing and our electrical whatever work by hanging out with people in the hobby, that just makes it even better. And maybe the value proposition of the NMRA, of Instagram, of Facebook, of TikTok, of whatever, is to help us find people to enjoy it with, so that it's that much better. Is the goal of all of this?
All right, let's read this one because this is a good one. I have questions about this one. The NMRA should make its mission to appeal to millennials and Gen Z. We are the future of the hobby. No offense, but only young people know how to reach out to young people. I agree with that. This means partnerships, collaborations, and letting us sit at the table. Train unboxing videos on YouTube gather hundreds of thousands of views in less than 24 hours. I'm not so sure I've seen hundreds of thousands of views, many views. The kid who records them makes me seem old. So is there somebody in particular that you have seen that does unboxing videos?
Yeah, I'll find them on YouTube and send you the name. But those videos have 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 views.
Really?
Each. Yeah, and they're just operating like stuff on a Cato Unitrack on a floor.
Right.
But they're well done and they're enthusiastic.
The NMRA has never had an audience reach or impact like this, which I agree with 100%. And I fear they have no idea how to tap into the enthusiasm for those of us under 40, which is basically what our discussion has been. There is an end scaler on TikTok getting hundreds of thousands of views a couple of years ago, installing turnouts on a layout on TikTok, which is primarily Gen Z and millennials. Well, I must be like a hip old guy because I look at TikTok and stuff.
I think it also falls into that. From my point of view, is there's just so much stuff out there. It's overwhelming. It is, and going to either TikTok or Facebook or whatever platform you're on, it just, I don't know. It's one of the things I have trouble with because there is so much information.
Yeah, I mean, you can easily get sidetracked. By the way, Derek, while we're on this subject, Mike Hauk has a beautiful layout, which was just featured in Railroad Model Craftsman, was it not?
Not that long ago. What was that? 6-8 months ago?
It was May of this year, I believe.
Yeah. So Derek, find yourself the May 2024 issue of Model Railroad Craftsman, and you'll be able to see Mike's layout, which is absolutely magnificent. And it brings up a subject. I'm interested in your opinion on this subject, Derek, because I've brought this up numerous times, and I don't know what the answer is. And I sense, or my buddy Tom Schmieder, I'm sure, is listening to this, and I sense that Tom and I are going to have an argument about this somewhere down the road because we've already tried to discuss it, and we're not making much headway. But like Mike has a beautiful layout. He handles 4 or 5 operators in an operating session. I would love to go to Mike's house with a bunch of guys from the AML Nation and have an operating session. But every time I think about it, or go into Uncle Dave's layout and have an operating session, every time I think about it, I think, well, who would I ask? Because the problem is somebody's feelings is going to get hurt. right? There's going to be people you don't ask that are going to be kind of like, oh, I would have really liked to go, and and you don't want it to be in a situation where you don't talk about it because you're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings. So like that's part of the problem of the popularity of the new world is when you make a whole bunch of friends, you're going to go do something cool. If it's a limited number of people, somebody's going to get left out, which is actually a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But it's a problem of the new world because you make so many friends this way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're full circle back to what we're saying. Like you say, the NMRA, man, I love that idea of what you said of, it should be more like a dating service or matching people up and stuff like that. Like if they had a virtual region, I would join that in a nanosecond.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't even be a virtual region. It should be just the whole. Everybody's connected, and there might be some sort of delineating a virtual region. And if they decide to have a convention, instead of involving one regional convention, they should have the two closest regions or three regions and centralize it so they have a bigger venue and a more manpower or whatever. It's
Well, I know if I could interject just 2 quick points. First of all, just a quick reminder, this discussion's been so great, but we are on the free channel. And secondly, to go back to your point about being a hip old guy, no, you're not.
Oh, jeez.
And you would know this how?
because I'm not either.
Getting old too. But Brad's around young people all day. Even as my wife's a teacher, and I have to ask her, what are the cool kids saying now? Like, what are the words? What are the slang terms? What are the social media platforms? And yeah, I think Brad probably has a closer read on it than Lionel does. Boy, he keeps picking a side, doesn't he?
Yeah, does he? I thought he ever like me. Oh, man.
I like this guy. Let's have him on again.
I don't think I'm even going to slow the bus down when I toss him.
Hey, Lionel, I think he's becoming sort of a Brad fanboy.
Yeah, that's what it is. He's a Brad fanboy.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
And you're right. It is on the free channel, and and our free podcasts are sponsored by Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
Look at that guy go. It only took us, several years to teach him?
Yeah, I know.
Unbelievable. You're doing a great job. All right. Well, we should probably start wrapping this up only because we could have this discussion several times. We could have this particular podcast topic several times because the only difference between us and Derek is the four of us have a love of the NMRA, and Derek can't see the point of it. And somehow we have to get Derek involved with more people so he can start to understand the benefits of, because like I say, I'll always belong to the NMRA. Like I'll be the last guy out. I'll turn the lights off because, and for no other reason other than it's the NMRA. And maybe because I'm older and I've belonged to it since I was a kid, maybe that's why I'll always belong to the NMRA. It's like I said in the last podcast with Derek, it's like being a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. That's where I was born. It's my team. And no matter how bad they are, I'll always be a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. And especially if they could find a guy that could see the puck when it's coming forward.
I'm sensing that this is becoming a source of irritation for you.
Hey, on the date of this recording, it starts tomorrow, Brad?
The NHL regular season, I believe.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and unfortunately, 3 days later, the Pittsburgh Penguins lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Leafs home opener.
We'll see about that.
Well,
I don't remember the score of that game. We'll have to see what it is.
Did the Leafs get a new goalie?
Well, they have a goalie.
Oh, okay. or did they shrink the net?
Yeah, that's what we need to do.
Darn net's too big.
So Derek, what do you think you've taken from these two podcasts? What do you think have they been of any value to you at all?
Yeah, of course. 100%. I think what you've taught me is it's good to get out of the basement. And I don't have a basement, but it's good to get out of the modeling room and talk to people in the hobby. and that means putting yourself out there, creating content, talking about the hobby. That's a net positive, and it can enhance your experience in the hobby. I still don't think there's any sort of matter of urgency for me to join the NMRA, but I hope that if there's somebody in the NMRA listening, and they want to take some of these ideas, I'd make me really happy.
What do you guys think of this? Because that's what I've been thinking since some of Derek's points. I'm horrible at remembering stuff, Derek, but would you be willing to like summarize some of the, especially the one about the free entry, summarize some of the things that we talked about so we can remember it next time we're talking to John Doring or Andy or even whoever, somebody higher up. I would be very curious to hear, especially like we'll just use John as an example because we've had some really good conversations with him. I would be curious as to his reaction, especially about having the free entry level part to see what, because I don't know what the barriers to doing that would be, but I do think that is a really, really intriguing concept to explore.
If you could summarize it and put it in an email, that would be A1. That would be awesome.
Yeah, happy to.
I don't know. I think his email here is a pretty good summary.
Lionel, do you see what I just did there? That's called giving him homework. I excel at that. No, Derek, thank you for being willing to do that, because I do think it would be great for us to be able to accurately convey your thoughts onward to even, I don't know, Lionel, this will be his decision, but I think personally it would be cool to have you on with a guy like John Doring sometime.
I think it's a no-brainer that I think the next time we do this, we should have Mike, who is what I sense, Mike, from you is you're an avid NMRA guy. You're happy to be involved in your division and take and volunteer to help it grow. But you're also a guy that would like to see the NMRA grow, and if change is necessary, you're willing to get on board and try to be part of the change. Is that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm just a worker bee in the trenches at the division level. I'm not a big picture guy. You need to get a big picture guy in like John Doring or even Gordy and get some of these points expressed to him and see if he can answer some of these questions that Derek has with the voice of the organization at a higher level.
Just remember that you are also the first line of connection to people who come to the meetings or come to the division meetings, whatever, to that contact to become interested in the NMRA.
True. And I try to remember that, and I'm lucky to have some other guys, on our leadership team who are also aware of that. And we struggle with that. We try to do that. Because we've heard horror stories of other divisions where it's just an old boys network, and we deliberately, consciously try to avoid doing that.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, one thing I took from the last podcast is Bruce was saying that these old boy guys they're all gonna die off and the problem will be solved. I think that's just an element of human nature. I think forever and ever there'll be guys that are just old boy guys, and they're closed club and they don't want new people in and stuff like that. I think that's a human thing.
I've seen some of the young kids as a group, sort of click. They have their little cliques.
Yeah, like cliques are an element of the human race. I don't think that'll ever go.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was on the board of one of the local gun clubs, and the trap shooters didn't talk to the pistol shooters, and they didn't talk to the flintlock guys. I mean, it's human. It's not unique to the NMRA.
Yeah.
But this is where generations matter, because I do think that inclusivity and representation is more important to millennials and Gen Z than anybody else. So just putting that out there, that there are probably some generational differences.
Yeah. Well, there'll always be generational differences.
I think you should have been with us when in the 60s when we were protesting the Vietnam War.
I wish I was.
You would have seen that we were pretty dedicated back then too. I think that's part of being younger. You have more enthusiasm. You have more energy, more enthusiasm. You have your ideology. Idealistic, yeah, and stuff like that. But where we're at right now with the NMRA and model railroading is we have never, I've said this before, we have never in the history of this hobby had the opportunity to connect like we have
Oh,
over
yeah.
the last 10 or 12 years. Once the smartphone came out, life
That was
changed in the hobby. It's like, as I've said this before, it's like we all came out from our basements from a nuclear blast, and we didn't realize you're a model railroader too. You're a model railroader. Like, it's like all of a sudden we're making connections with people you never would have. Derek, you and I never would have met in a million years had it
Definitely not.
had it not been for social media, and then in our particular case, the podcast. But there's a million different ways you connect with people, and in this new world, it's been I think Al Gore invented the internet specifically for model railroading.
I think you're right, and I think it's probably crazy that we've all come out and hundreds of thousands of people are participating. I sent you a link to a YouTube video, a Walther's train unboxing that 7.7 million people watched on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, the laws of big numbers here are crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that the potential for the hobby is huge.
Yeah.
And the flagship organization should be growing in parallel with the rest of the internet and social media around this hobby. And the fact that it's stagnant is an indictment of the current status quo.
Where did you send the link to? Oh, in the chat here? I don't understand the chat on this thing.
I'm sending it right now.
And I got a cute story to tell, and I got a point to make to you. Okay.
Oops, we lost Kelly.
We lost Kelly.
Yeah, well, he'll be back. I think I might delete that. Oh, look, he's
There,
back.
he's back.
He's
I
back.
pushed the wrong button. I was looking for the chat, and
Oh, okay. You're going to email those links to me, right?
I already sent it.
Attaboy. And the
Send him a calendar invite while you're at it.
there
Derek.
you go. Well, I want to tell this. I want to tell this cute story about Derek because I think it's hilarious. And Derek, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about one of our private conversations.
100%.
So somewhere along the line, he started to say, one thing you could do is create your own journal of local and regional events. Make an AML national calendar. And I replied, that would be a ton of work. And he goes, well, make it community driven. Build a calendar and let your listeners in the AML Nation. And I go, understand, but I'm not doing it. It's a ton of work. And he goes, true, but you have a lot of influence in the community. All you'd have to do is point your community in the right direction, blah, 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 blah. And he goes on. And I'm going, yeah, no, that's not happening. It's a lot of work. So there you go. An old guy and a young guy. He's like, come on, man. It's like super simple. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
But I think it's that risk-taking mentality that we all have to have in order to grow something.
No, it's not.
He does that. He does that in other ways.
Yeah,
I wouldn't get in the car with him. Let me tell you.
I have no problem taking risks. It's I just don't need I don't need more work with the podcast. It's like I got to figure it out, and then blah.
You would be safer with him in a car. I've seen him drive. He doesn't go fast enough to get
he
hurt.
observes the speed limit.
Yeah,
we had an overland rally race from Tom Stock up to Burnham, Pennsylvania, and it was a pretty pathetic showing on Evil over large part, I have to say.
I was going like hell, and I was like, well, that's for sure. So what was it you were trying to tell me about this calendar you wanted me to make?
Oh, you had suggested to me that the problem is that there's too much cool stuff going on that nobody knows about in the hobby. So what I had suggested was, why don't you create an AML essentially classified section where we can create an index or database of events that are happening, meetups, modelers in certain places that want to identify themselves, and great layouts around the country. I think of it just as a simple like Craigslist for model railroading or like a Wikipedia for model railroading, but essentially, if nobody else is creating a directory of all the cool stuff that's out there, all the cool events, RPMs, NMRA groups, the divisions you do want to join, the cool conferences, the cool layouts that are open to the public, whatever. You can create the structure for that, and then the AML community, all thousands and thousands of us, we all know where the cool layouts are. We all know who's really cool in the hobby, and so we can start to build a directory of all the cool stuff there is.
How
Because
about
ultimately,
why don't you create the directory and I'll put a link to it?
I have even more homework now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Welcome to the club.
Well, that's like poor Matt Milligan when we were at Tomstock on the Saturday night. He comes to me and he says, "I'd like to create a database of all the AML of a bunch of AML people so that they could all connect." And I went, "Yeah, okay." And he said, "But I would need I would need like information about." Yeah, I said, "I'm not doing that."
Yeah,
I think the first question you asked him was, "I'm fine with it as long as I don't have to do anything."
Yeah, he said, "Well, I just need a copy of the database or something like that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." I enjoy doing the podcast. I enjoy the podcast a lot. I enjoy making it. I enjoy producing it. But I promised myself when I started it, don't do anything that you're not going to be able to finish or complete.
Yeah.
Or make it become work.
Yeah, then it starts to become work, and it's kind of like that's like, this is how dopey I am. This is a classic example of how I have no problem saying that I'm like the dumbest guy on the planet. Easily, I am easily like the dumbest guy on the planet. So I have these shirts to send out, which I really enjoy doing, and I have these poly mailers. And for the longest time, I'm trying to figure out a way to keep track of it all. And, then I realized that, I would go to the top of the list and start, and then I'd take a couple months off and I'd go back to the top of the list. And it's just, and then I came up with a really good system of go through the list, address the poly mailers, and put their shirt size on there. And when you've got that all done, then you can go back and stuff the bags and close them up. Well, then I discovered that if you go to U.S. Postal Service, they have these bags that are $10.90, and whatever you can stuff in it, it's $10.90 to send it out. So I thought, great. So for the last 2 or 3 years, I would address the poly mailers, the bags, and I'd stuff them, and then I'd put them in these U.S. Postal Service bags, and I'd address them. And I knew it was redundant, but it was an easy way for me to keep track of everything. And then this year, just recently, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was sending out my One More Year shirts. And I thought, well, I've only got, 20 or 30 of these to do. I'll just put the address right on the U.S. Postal Service envelope. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, why am I not doing this with the other shirts? And the light bulb goes off, and I'm thinking to myself, you've got to be like the dumbest guy on the planet. Like, seriously.
I think the thing with you is the light bulb is very bright, but it takes a hell of a lot of electricity to turn it on.
Oh, wow.
Would that be accurate, do you think?
I have no idea. I don't think you'll ever be on the show again, so it doesn't matter.
I know.
Actually, you're about, like, it's like I've always said. I remember the time I said to my psychiatrist, this is, to me, I think it perfectly describes me. Think of me as your dim-witted brother.
And all the problems just melt away.
Yeah. Then you're never going to be disappointed, and you'll be surprised and happy when I manage to do something. I've accomplished something over the last 2 months. Wow. Way to go, Steve. You managed to sharpen that pencil.
You tied your shoes very well today.
Yeah.
Does she go visit her own psychiatrist after your visit?
Yeah, I think she has her own. Yeah. 10 years this poor woman's been putting up with this. It's like, I was actually talking to her today, and then I get in a mood. The last time I went to see her, I was late, so then we got going back and forth on texting, and I sent her. Let me read this text that I sent her today, and I'm like, I know I'm just irritating the living crap out of her because she's busy. She's one of the top psychiatrists in the country, and in one of the best hospitals in the country, one of the best hospitals in the world. She travels all over the world giving speeches and this and that. So I had another doctor's appointment today. So I made my appointment on time. Nothing you need to know other than you had to wait for me the last 2 visits. Took into consideration traffic patterns, atmospheric pressure, and population density for final time calculations. Hey, hey, you want to meet for lunch?
That is funny right there. I don't care who you are.
All right, that's it. Rapido Trains.
You are fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's M, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
And now for some real down-home fun, Kelly's going to give out our email address.
Yeah. If you want to reach us by the wonders of email, you can reach us at modellerslife@back it up.
So close.
I know. Jeez.
That was sounding so good at the beginning.
It was, wasn't it? It was.
I know.
Like, man, I was
modellerslife@gmail.com. That's modeler with one L like old guys, not 2 L's like fellowship.
Nice.
Ooh.
That was very nice.
It was,
yes.
almost worth the
It was
wait.
good. It's just that.
That was worth. It was almost worth the wait. It
I
was
know.
worth the wait. You know what? It was worth the wait.
Yes, it is.
And this is on the free channel. So if you didn't catch that email address, if you go to our website, amodellerslife.com, and you scroll down to the picture of the moderately agitated mailboy in a particularly agitated state, all you got to do is click on his picture, and boom, the email address is filled in for you. And Derek, can I ask you a question?
You sure can.
Have you ever wanted a T-shirt with a hot dog on it?
More than anything.
Well, if you go to Midwest Model Railroad and their URL is midwestmodelrr.com, go to the navigation bar and scroll across to Other and hit the drop-down menu. You'll see AML Shop, and boom, you are in a wonderland of AML merchandise. Hats, hoodies, T-shirts, mugs, and in there you'll find a T-shirt with a hot dog on it. And one of us that's present today has a wide array of T-shirts with hot dogs on them.
Is the array wide, or are you just making another fat joke about the T-shirt being wide? just want clarification. You're not going to answer me, are you?
No.
You're going to let me stew over that one. I see.
That would be rude to make a joke like that. Come on. Us fat guys,
I can take it.
Us fat guys got to stick together.
Yeah. It inspires me to keep doing something about it, though.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Actually, I've actually discovered today that I've lost 25 pounds over the last year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not on purpose. And what else do we got to do? Oh, yeah. And if you like this podcast, this is on the free channel. This is Derek Magnotta twice. Am I saying that correctly? Is it Derek?
It is Derek.
Okay. If you like this podcast and you'd like to have twice as much podcasting every week, if you click on our Patreon link on our website, boom, you're in then you get a podcast every Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday is our paid channel. It's our back porch, down home, fun time. We do viewer mail on there. We have fireside chats. We have all kinds of cool stuff on that channel. It's just a little different. It's a little more fun. It's not more fun. It's just a little more let your hair down kind of podcast.
It's when the fun bunch really comes out to play,
That's the
right?
fun bunch. We are the fun bunch.
Yeah.
We got to get a T-shirt that says the fun bunch on it.
Yeah. Yep.
And and then if you are on the Patreon, you do join Patreon and you go to the T-shirt level, boom, then you are entered in the game show that is sweeping the globe. Hey, dude, where's my shirt?
Mm.
And if you've been listening to this podcast, you understand why it takes a while for you to get your shirt, because the guy that's doing it, dumber than a skid of bricks. I think that's it. I think we've covered it all, have we not?
Mm-hmm.
I hope so.
You nailed it. Yep.
All right. So, Derek, at the appropriate moment, you have to say happy rails to you. Now
I'm ready.
Now here's the key. There's no singing. There's no dancing. There's no interpretation of any kind. We just need you to say, with enthusiasm, happy rails to you. Can you handle that?
Isn't enthusiasm interpretation?
This guy's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Has he listened to the podcast before?
Yeah. I'm started getting a pain in my neck.
Well, at least it's not someplace else.
Oh God!
I can hear me now with my psychiatrist. There's this guy in Alabama. It's just like, so, anyways, are you ready, Derek?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, Derek, as the sun slowly sets over the back 40, and we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
happy rails to you.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of A Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
that was almost singing, wasn't it?
Nah,
It was pretty close to singing, I think.
close, but not enough. I think it was just the tone. It was the tone.
I think he was trying to sneak singing in there. He was on the verge of starting to sing it.
Hmm.
I feel like.
I think I thought it was just enthusiasm, but
Yeah.
but
Really?
you know more about it than I do, though. So I'll defer to your judgment.
I'll defer to you because I can be quite critical sometimes. So
No.